Ashley, it's Diane Baker.
You don't want it that close.
Diane, we are so grateful that you're here for Monster Mash. We really are.
For me, it is a great, great joy because you spend many years working in front of the camera and behind the camera in Europe and world, and you work. And then finally you get to an age where you finally realize you're doing this for an audience. You're doing it, but we in the film industry don't see the audience. We don't know. And finally, I was invited to my first one of those shows, the autograph show in Hollywood, and I realized they come and they care. You love movies. I have never seen so many people who love movies. I'm stunned. It brings tears. Because I never, you know people go to movies, they pay money and they go out and see films, but to see so many people who love movies.
Well, we've just seen Tim Riley's Bar, the Night
Yes.
Gallery episode. Everyone here just watched that. I think you were just dynamic.
I was?
Yes. Do you think she was great in that? Can you shed a little memories of working with Rod Serling's Night Gallery?
Well, the memories fade, I have to say. Certain, you do so many shows and then you can't remember which is which. But this one, I happen to think William Wyndham was an underrated, unappreciated actor. He got caught in the series, and then he went on to do Murder, She Wrote with Angela, and I felt this man deserved. I felt that somehow that part was kind of very close in a funny way to the way I feel that Bill Wyndham must have had some area. He wanted more. He wanted to be in something really big or special, and he just never seemed to have gotten that break. Does that make sense to you? You know, he didn't get the breaks of the big stars or the other, but he could have been a great character actor in major films.
He was great in everything I've seen. When I was young, I saw him in It's My Life and It's My World and Welcome to It. I loved it. And everything I've seen him in since, he's been terrific. But
Well, I thought he was brilliant, and I was amazed through the shooting, watching him. It was easy for me to admire him while I was working with him.
well, I know we're gonna get to people's questions because all these fans have all kinds of questions. I just want to let's just set it up with back to the beginning. How did you get started in acting?
Well, how can I say, how did I get started? I grew up in Hollywood on Fountain and Laurel Avenue. And across the street, Helen Gahagan Douglas was a congresswoman married to Melvin Douglas. Now, I have a question for all of you. Why in the world has no one brought up in any of these major movie events this work of Melvin Douglas? Melvin Douglas, a great actor, but somehow he's been kind of in the shadows of all the major people. I cry because I grew up with them in their home. I was with them all the time. I would sit at the dinner table in the house on Outpost Drive. One year, many years later, Helen said to me, when I bought my house not far from them, when I got to buy my first home, and they came to dinner, and she said, I had a feeling you would end up somewhere near where you grew up, and how many times I was with them, and how Melvin read Mr. Blanding's Builds His Dream House out loud to the family, and I'm seated there as a 9-year-old hearing this great actor read out loud his film that he was going to star in. And then to see Ninotchka, and he laughingly said to me once, "Do you know, I was really in pain after having to fall backwards in that chair and make Garble laugh." And finally she laughed. But it took 17 falls in that chair, backwards, for her to finally laugh. I think she laughed because she thought it was so pathetic. Poor man. Anyway, I grew up with them, and so I think there was an inspiration there somewhere within me, so that when I graduated high school and I got a chance to be involved, I raised some money on my own working as a model. And I think I was, then my parents wanted me to go to USC to be a college student, university. So I went, and I kind of was able to get through about almost 2 years studying. And one of my professors finally one day pushed the actual book from the class aside and saw me with a play, reading a play. And he looked at me and he said, I think you've missed where you should really be. Maybe you should just leave university and do what you want to do. And I thought that was so interesting because I really wasn't that interested. And years later, I called Marty Scorsese in New York because he'd asked me when I was just starting out to be in his thesis film at university. And I had to say no because I was under contract to 20th Century Fox. And I said, years later, I'm now teaching at the Academy of Art University in San Francisco, and I called Marty to come out to school, and he was at Cannes, he couldn't make it, and I said, I finally understand now that I'm in a university what you feel like when you were at NYU and you wanted a young actress. Now I'm the other side of it, and I'm looking for you to come to me to help my young students, and I know what the students feel like. And I love that sense of giving back to the young people. So how did I get started? Bernie is sitting here. Poor man, he sat there all day for 2 days next to me. Oh, thank you. But anyway, I just got started acting class with the money I earned. My parents were shocked. And an agent came to the class, and he watched me work, and the teacher said, no, she's not ready. I don't want her to go out on interviews or have an agent because I'm teaching, and I don't think she's ready yet. So a year passed, and I'm studying, and suddenly the agent came back, and he said, I want to take her on to 4 different interviews to the 4 studios, and to do a scene from East of Eden. So, lo and behold, Robert Osborne is now in LA, and Jane Darwell had invited him out to stay in her guest house. Robert Osborne from TCM. And so he's in the Valley, my parents were in the Valley, I was living at home, and Fox, they asked me if I would do the scene with Robert Osborne. So we worked on the scene, and we did it in front of an audience at 20th Century Fox. And I was asked by 3 studios to sign a contract. Paramount, CBS was doing movies at the time, and Fox. So we decided 20th Century Fox would be the place. So I started. First day, they introduce you around, and I got to go on all the sets anytime I wanted. During the day, mostly, of course, and I got to watch all of these incredible film people. I mean, you don't want to just have me ramble on, I hope. I could ramble all night about these great people. Do you want any stories about some of the great? Okay. Here I get to be free to go wherever I want, and there's Frank Tashlin filming comedies. He invited me to sit. Gave me a little chair to sit on. I'm beginning, the novice, just a kid. Then there's Joanne and Paul Woodward and Newman doing Long Hot Summer. I get to watch them shoot. and I'm watching Marty direct them in the scene, and I'm fascinated by all of it. And the crew members used to tease me, and they'd play tricks on me and had like a snake coming behind me, and I'd scream or jump up, or I'd try to sneak behind the camera and watch everything quietly. I didn't want to make a move. So then there were, Orson Welles was doing Compulsion. And he was doing a 12-minute scene as the attorney, a lawyer fighting as an attorney. And he was marching up and down with this 12-page scene. I was fascinated. How can one person do 12 pages? And he kept doing it, and they kept cutting. Finally, he cut. He said, cut. The man in the back row over in their jury box, his stomach is rumbling. Feed him some lunch. Let's take a break. I've never seen an actor cut the scene, but the director usually says cut. He was able to hear, as a lawyer speaking, somebody's stomach rumbling. So these were wonderful years. All the actors I got to watch work. Enough said.
Okay, well, Diary of Anne Frank and movies that I know almost all of you have seen, Journey to the Center of the Earth, and it just goes on and on. Let's go to what you want to ask Diane. Nick, go ahead.
Hello, Ms. Baker.
Hi, Nick.
We were speaking earlier at the table tonight.
You had so many questions and were fascinated with so many.
Well, you are well acknowledged.
No, but you were asked so wonderful questions.
You mentioned Martin Landau earlier at the table, and he's one of my all-time favorite actors. Can you share something with the crowd about the making of The Ghost of Sierra de Cobre, also known as The Haunted?
It started as The Haunting. I was shocked when I heard there was a movie I was in called something Sierra Cobre. I never heard of it. And I thought, I'm not in that movie. I don't recall making that film. And they said, well, but Martin Landau and Dame Judith Anderson are in it? Oh, of course I did it at MGM. It was the first, one of the first movies for television made for television at a studio. And I loved working with Marty. I invited him up to the academy when I was running the school, film school, in the acting program. And he willingly came and spoke to the kids when sitting with them and talked about the actor's studio. He was just the nicest guy. I used to remember sitting on his lap on the set. We were exhausted. And Dame Judith Anderson came and sat on my dressing room step, but the dressing room on the floor. And the studio came down and gave me brand new lines, a page of dialogue to add to the show. And it was like 6 o'clock in the evening. And Judith is on the stairs trying to cue me to help me learn my lines. And she's a great actress. They played Medea. And Marty, Dame Judith, these wonderful actors I got to work with. They just lifted me off the floor. I mean, help support. That's the thing I'm most grateful about, I think, most of all, is that I had so many wonderful people willing to support my efforts as long as I worked. If I just lay back and didn't care, I don't think anybody would have cared, but I was determined. So for me, to have those wonderful actors that I was so lucky to work with, and they're almost all gone now, and that's the saddest part.
More questions for Diane. Okay, in the purple here.
Hi, Diane. I just recently watched another television movie called The Haunted.
That's the one.
In which you played Lorraine Warren, the ghost hunter.
Yeah.
And so I'm wondering how you researched that part. Did you meet the Warrens? Were you able to learn about how they worked before playing that role?
Oh, that's not the one. That's another one. Oh, The Haunted. Yeah, that was. Who was the actor?
Jeffrey DeMunn.
Jeffrey DeMunn. I'll tell you a story about that. No, seriously, I came home from being in that film, and one night, the desk across my room was creaking so loudly. I woke up, I got terrified, because these things happen. And then the makeup man had a ghost in his house, and he starts telling me the story about how he was haunted. So now I'm living in this terrified place. I'm in the middle of the show, and I'm feeling like they're coming after. I'm being haunted. And yet I was an investigator. So they didn't want an investigator. The people who are haunting, they don't like investigators, I figured. So I had the desk moved out of my bedroom, into a library that I couldn't handle it, this creaking at night. I swear to you, the desk doesn't creak normally. I mean, truly. It only creaked while I'm doing that show. That's years ago, thank God.
Okay, in the back, Scott.
Yes. Could you tell us about working with Anthony Hopkins in Silence of the Lambs?
Well, I knew Anthony. We'd had dinner and lunch several times before he left Hollywood while he was filming earlier. And he was just a wonderful actor. I saw him at the National Theatre in London playing in Rosencrantz in Guildenstern years earlier. And I met him at a BAFTA event, which is the British Association of Film and Television. And we became friends, and he left to go back to England. I guess there wasn't any work here, or I don't know what happened. But then he returned, and suddenly I was in New York. Jonathan Demme called me and asked me to come over to his office. And he had Demme's plumbing on his office door. He was a funny guy, a wonderful director, but he just wanted to be obscure. He didn't have all that need for publicity. So he gave me the script of Silence. He said, take it back to your hotel and tell me if you want to do the part. It's small, but just, I hope you do it. So I read it, and I said, yeah, I'm happy to do this small part. Didn't realize that it would be what it turned out to be. But working with Anthony, this first scene we did in the hangar, we both let it out. I mean, the lines were so devastating, and he shouted at me, and I shouted back at him. Jonathan walked over, cut. Diane and Anthony. Let's do that take again. That take is history. Calm down. So Anthony's like, now he's like this, and I'm like this. Take that, I mean, we really downplayed it, but we didn't realize how it would show. If you shouting at each other, it would have taken all the meaning away. But it was so kind of evil. I mean, it was a horrible moment to have someone say those lines to you. A senator, a woman, especially a woman, but a senator. And, you just don't talk like that. Well, there was one or two people who talk like that. Okay.
All right. Right here in front.
Straight Jacket is a master class in acting. And I'm wondering.
In a master class in what way? Tell me. That's.
I watch Straight Jacket and see the moments of just character changes with Jim Clausen. There's a moment.
I'm so glad you mentioned that.
When she's breaking down and then decides that she's going to pull it all together, and she turns, and it is just fantastic.
Well,
What was it like?
Well, let me tell you something interesting. While you're doing it, you're not watching the acting. You're trying to think about what you're going to do next. But Foster Hirsch, who's a wonderful historian, author, has written many books, The latest one is the 70s. Oh, it was at the 60s, 50s, sorry, my God, the 50s. Book about all the films of the 50s. And he interviewed me at Fort Lauderdale, and I was given an honor there a few years ago. And he asked me all these questions about it, and we both agreed. He said, Diane, when you were in the scene with Crawford and your boyfriend was there, and she became like a teenager, I said, Foster, he said that was brilliant, was it not? I said, you know, I was equally shocked. That was absolutely extraordinary work. She was then in her late, was she 70s or something? I think she was in her 70s. And I didn't expect to see her transform herself like she did. But I wasn't thinking about it at that time. I wasn't going, oh, Joan Crawford, how brilliant. But looking back and seeing the movie as it was finally edited and put together was really quite wonderful. I agree with you. I think that may be partly why it's going to hold up. Do you think that the Baby Charlotte is going to hold up with Betty Davis? Do you think that's going to hold up? It's interesting.
But working with Joan Crawford in general,
The experience, it's hard to explain because, I was surprised to be cast. I heard after that someone was fired and I was pulled in at the last minute. She was a star, and there's no question, but I had been lucky because Melvyn Douglas was my guardian angel in a sense. I'll tell a quick story in that I was staying with the Douglases in New York when Joan was in New York, and she made a call to me. She knew I was friends with the Douglases. And so I don't know that they were great friends, as a matter of fact. I don't think they were, but Melvyn kind of guided me behind the scenes. He tried to share with me and make me understand what it would be like to work with a star of that caliber. It isn't easy, but I learned so much watching her. And she was meticulous. She would try to say things to me like, you must never go out to a market unless you're dressed beautifully. Well, I didn't go to the market dressed up like I'm going to a party. I never thought of that. I mean, you wore what you wore. But she had strict values about the way you must act or the way you must, and she even one day had someone, the photographer on the set, take a photograph of a mistake, the costume, my costume, and sent it to the set, fix this. She mustn't look like that. A day I had a wonderful, my teacher came to the set to watch shooting. And I get a call from the makeup woman saying, Miss Crawford would like to see you and talk to you. I said, wait a minute, Diane, who are you? Are you? Do they stick their fingers and you run? No. Melvyn, where are you guiding me? I said, excuse me, tell Miss Crawford that when I finish with my guest, I would be happy to come talk to her. Where did she come from? Where did that word, how did I was able to do that? But she demanded, but in a nice way. It wasn't malicious, it was just that was her nature. I learned so much about how to be professional. I learned one day we're doing our lines and I was whispering mine in a rehearsal with a camera. And she started saying my lines out loud as well. Speak up. So I was shaking, I was nervous, really frightened about this encounter on the set. So I went to the dressing room and the director came out and said, don't worry, use it. Use this feeling you have right now. You're nervous. She upset you because she was in front of the crew. And I got to my room and I thought, oh my God, I can't go out and do this scene. How can I do this now? So I made it, and when she slaps me in the scene, this was another show, by the way. Mother, tears came to my eyes, and I was like, ah! And it worked. My own feeling about being treated, you know, but I knew it was Crawford teaching. I got it. I picked it up. I finally understood. She was trying to teach me, and I cried because years later, somebody sent me a letter that she sent to them in somewhere, and it said, they asked who do you believe will make it in Hollywood? She said, there's this young actress named Diane Baker who I think is going to make it. And I saw that. I mean, truly, it moved me so much because she didn't act like that. I didn't get, you know, she was working and trying to make sure I got it. That's the truth.
Wow. Okay, more questions for Diane. Right back here.
Diane, how was your experience with William Castle?
Bill Castle? Oh, he was a big teddy bear. He was a charming, wonderful man. I found myself doing wardrobe, and he was marching around trying to help me decide on what I should wear in the film. And it never occurred to me that taking my top off and moving. He wasn't standing right watching me, but he was in the room, and he was so like your father or a family member. He was so warm and wonderful. A moment happened on Straight Jacket where, this is another moment, was fascinating to me. That wasn't in the script. This wasn't in the script. When I banged that part was in the script, when I reached the door at the bottom of the stairs, holding the mask and pounding it, screaming, I hate you, I love you, I hate you. She watched that scene she was at the top of the stairs watching me, and the next hour after I finished, Bill Castle came and said, we're going to do a new setup. Joan is going to be outside on the porch crying while you're pounding your fist in the face of the mask. She talked him into giving her a crying scene outside. Well, I was the end of that scene. It was finished. She watched what I was doing, so it kind of turned around in a funny way. She didn't want to be left with the big scene, but it was all she asked for it and she got it. She was the star. That's fascinating. I had Susan Hayward once say to me in Cornwall, England, when I played her sister in Stolen Hours, and she said, I can take this scene away from you if I wanted to. And I said, why? I learned that two actors have to be good together, and that's what makes the scene work, not one taking it away from the other. But there was a mentality in those years that even in the theater, if an actor was good, there was someone holding a cigarette lit, putting it on a table and letting it, so the whole audience is watching the cigarette because they didn't want to see the other actor do something exciting. I learned that you watch the other actor, if they're good, you're listening. You're in the scene and you're listening, you're with them, and you see that they're good, and you get better. I was talking to you because you brought up the master class. If you're good, they're good, and you think they're brilliant, and you're listening and you're involved, then you've got to be reacting naturally and realistically, because you're in it. Anyway, I learned a lot about this. There's a system of stardom. And then it gets less and less because then the studio came in. And then the school started teaching actors how to treat one another. And the more you work together collaboratively, the better the films were. But the star system had levels. I remember in Spain when Max Schell, the crews had their levels, and I saw them treat the extras so badly that I made a stand in front of the whole crew and said, unless you bring those extras, give them food and help them, they're just as important as we are. You have all these, they should be applauding the supporting actors, the small parts actors. They're what make the movies. Thelma Ritter, let's talk about Thelma Ritter. Let's talk about all those wonderful actors and actresses who played the second or third role. Without those actors who played with the stars and had their scenes, you wouldn't have the great movies you had in the past. Anyway.
Okay, we have time for about one more question. Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you have any memories of interesting memories?
Well, you really don't want me to talk about Hitchcock. No, you don't. A whole movie, and Mr. Hitchcock doesn't talk to his star, Tippi Hedren, on that film. I was in the middle of it all. I watched it happen every day. I was never sick on a movie, but I stayed home one day before Christmas. I was so sick because I couldn't bear. He wouldn't talk to her after The Birds, and she wanted to quit. She had a contract. She wrote her book. You probably all read it, or half of you. I was just, it was hard because he was talking to me as if I was the star, and he would do it in front of Tippi and often. And one day I said, Mr. Hitchcock, I wonder how you talk about me behind my back. He said, no, I adore you. I would never say anything again. Well, then I wondered why you would talk about Tippi to me near her, near where she could hear what you're saying. It was cruel.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, it was cruel.
We had a fallout on the Birds because they had real birds.
Yeah,
Mixed one.
I know, she suffered. She suffered.
She got packed in that. That was the beginning of the fallout.
Yeah, I know. But again, I have to say this, he taught me so much. He was he taught me many things on that film. I watched, unfortunately, it was a bad time for him. I have to give him, my friend Robert Tevis has taught me one thing. He's sitting back there. Try not to be negative about anybody, because you never know I say this now, you never know if they had a bad day. You just don't know what caused the moments. But I think he was so unhappy on the morning because he would go to his room, and I was invited to the privacy with Sean and lunches. Tippi wasn't invited. I'm there with Sean, and I'm looking, where's Tippi? Where's Tippi? I'm young again, at 64. And he fell asleep in a tape. Directing, he fell sound asleep. And the assistant director had to say, Hitch, say cut. And I'm watching as other actors. But again, I learned so many things because he was a master. And you learn from the negative. I had to, Bob, I'm sorry.
Okay, let's take one more question. Okay, and the woman in the glasses?
Yellow hair?
Yeah, yellow hair.
That's a good title for a movie, The Girl with the Yellow Hair.
My body count. And it has such a great cast, and you're so beautiful in everything that you wore in that movie. But I was wondering, did you ever get to meet or work with Gertrude the Duck?
Who?
Gertrude
in Journey to the Center of the Earth.
Oh,
The duck.
No, I didn't. No, I'm so sorry. It saddens me. I'm forever miserable because I never got to work there.
All right,
But
well,
what a fun movie. It lasts, it's holding up, and in spite of the fact there was no CGI, there was no effects and all that. But what they did with it, just the combination of the people in it, and it was fun doing.
okay, well, I think Ursula of the Monster Bash has something for you,
Ursula.
Diane. We have a vendor that owns a chocolate factory in Pittsburgh, and these are fine chocolates just for you, our Monster Bash guest of honor.
There aren't enough in here to offer one.
But please give a round of applause for Diane Baker of Monster Bash.